Retrofuture.
Hello everyone, I'm Bonser, the Radio Retrofuture. Say, are you a steampunk fan but tired of top hats and goggles? Are you looking for a world that's an ocean wide and a canyon deep? Then the Association of Ishtar might be the series for you. It's a collection of books and games set in a world of weird fiction and cosmic mystery, with an associated tabletop role-playing game called Nightwatch. So if you're looking for a steampunk RPG with a relatively simple rule set, something you can easily run alongside systems like Dungeons & Dragons and Daggerheart, then my friend, this might be the series for you. In this primer video, I'll explain the core concepts, terminology, and the need-to-know technologies required to understand and run your own game set in a massive steampunk universe. And therefore, I'll be referring to this setting as Nightwatch. I can already feel the viewer's attention span being stretched to its limit, so let's get straight into it, and then I'll explain my plans for this series near the end. So, what is Nightwatch? Let me welcome you to an altered 19th century in which anomalies called rifts are opening up all over the globe. These rifts are gateways to other worlds in a vast multiverse. These gateways cause an influx of all kinds of new and innovative technologies, but also alien threats. Standing between humanity and these alien threats is one organization of volunteers known as the Association of Ishtar. Its members, called Associates, consider themselves the first line of defense against whatever alien agents try to manipulate human affairs. And that's the core premise, which is simple on the surface, but don't worry, it will get much weirder from here. A very brief history lesson. The Divergence in this timeline begins in 1792 when a strange bell-shaped object appeared in the wake of the moon. This object became known as Elysium. What is it and where does it come from? And what it's doing up there remains a mystery, unless you read the books of course, which I'm gonna assume you haven't. Then the French Revolution happened. History proceeded much as you'd expect. The beheading of the king, Robespierre, the Directorate, and Napoleon's rise to power. Eventually, Napoleon defeats every major power in Europe and crowns himself emperor. Britain refuses to yield, however, and the Napoleonic Wars continue until Napoleon begins launching actual rockets traveling faster than the speed of sound at England. The war still ends, as history remembers it. Napoleon was defeated at Leipzig in 1813 and in Waterloo in 1815, but the legacy of those rockets would endure. Now I have other videos that go into great detail on what followed, so for now we'll skip ahead to the year 1869, the year in which the first edition of Nightwatch takes place. At the point of making this video, it's still not yet published, but it's coming very soon. Let's begin with what most steampunk fans are most interested in, the technology. By 1869, consumer-level technology is about on par with what we had in the 1920s. However, these are the most advanced parts of the world, the metropolitan areas especially. When it comes to the proliferation of technology, you can compare it almost with the world of Fallout. At one point in time, you're visiting a town where the most advanced product is horse dung. Over in the next place, you're debating political philosophy with a rogue AI. Due to the rift anomalies, this world has access to blueprints even more advanced than our own. However, they do not have the manufacturing and logistical capacity to produce advanced technology in large quantities. Yes, there are some companies that know how to create microchips on par with Pentium i568s. If you don't know what that is, ask your grandparents. Damn, I'm old. So, there are definitely places that look historically Victorian, and then there are locations on par with a supervillain lair from the 1950s. And before anyone asks, yes, steam trains are very prevalent, but the early cars here already use combustion or electric engines. And so you know, no, electric cars are not some futuristic super tech. Many early cars used to run on batteries, they even had charging stations. But just like today, they have a very short range and have a tendency to catch fire. It's important to mention that every metropolitan household already has a radio called a Wavecaster, produced by a company called UtterCorp. Most of the entertainment industry has been monopolized by this corporate giant. They even used to have their own bank until the Dutch government broke them up for a scandal I will not get into here. The point is, news travels fast in this setting. For game masters, radios could make your players aware of certain events. Instead of gathering the party in one place at the start of an adventure, they could be minding their own business when they hear the news announcements that will attract their attention. As for the political situation, this is the map up to 1869. At first glance it looks familiar, except for a single detail: the Dutch Commonwealth. And yes, I know, who cares about Belgium, however this is the only way I'll ever get to talk about the Flemish province. Anyway, the Dutch Commonwealth is a direct result of the Napoleonic Wars. To prevent Prussia and France from immediately tearing into one another, the Congress of Vienna created the Commonwealth as a buffer state between the two empires. Unfortunately, they made the mistake of making Napoleon's brother, Louis Bonaparte, King of the Netherlands. But that's a story for another time. They expected him to rule their buffer state for the preservation of the status quo. Unfortunately for them, Louis was ambitious. Free from his brother's oversight, between 1815 and 1850, he initiated a small industrial revolution within the kingdom, aided by UtterCorp. Get used to that name because you're gonna hear it a lot. No, I'm not sorry. Together, they dragged a stagnant economy into the 19th century, transforming it into one of the world's most technologically advanced nations. However, this also meant the Dutch began interfering in the heavily contested French regions of Alsace and Lorraine, much to the irritation of both Prussia and France. Now, why are these provinces so important? For that question, we need to talk about how rifts changed politics. But before we continue, one brief intermission. If you're following me for a while, you may have already read one of my books. And if you enjoyed The Casket Girls, I have news for you. This year we are launching our next Kickstarter, Casket Girls 2: Engines of the Damned. But Bonsert, I'm a post-millennial, I never read a full book before. Well, fret not, dear viewer, because I'm in conversation with an audiobook company to have both books professionally recorded. I might actually get some actual star power involved, but I'll keep you updated on the process. Once we hit 100 followers on Kickstarter, we'll launch the project. And if you want to see where the Casket Girls go next, well, just go and follow the Kickstarter. Alright, back to the story. Now, we mentioned them a couple of times, so let's get into what is a rift. Rifts are two-way portals between alternate versions of Earth, known as planes. To distinguish these worlds, the primary plane of this setting is referred to as Atlas, a designation used only by the most high level of organizations. To ordinary people, Earth is just Earth, and every other world is just an alien planet. Now, some of these worlds have been fleshed out, of course, but as a game master, you're free to come up with whatever nonsense you want. As far as Rift travel is concerned, stepping through one of these anomalies is easy. In-game they function as straightforward gateways to adventure. You can even bring things back with you. Napoleon's rockets were developed using technology recovered from the rifts. He was one of the first to realize that these anomalies could be exploited for innovations. After the Napoleonic Wars, more rifts were discovered. For decades they were treated as curiosities. Strange, unsettling, but not immediately life-threatening. This illusion collapsed, however, when a dinosaur was rampaging through the Spanish countryside. It's kinda hard to hide a 90-foot behemoth that levels entire towns, you see. In response, scandals mounted and governments were forced to acknowledge that they had a problem. This led to the creation of the International Committee of Rift-Related Activity, commonly known as RA. Some of my readers have started to call it the Rift Authority. Fine, I'll allow it. For those who want to know more, we already have 2 long-form videos discussing the creation of Ra, so go check those out if you want to learn more about rifts and politics. As for the relationship between the common people and the rifts, it's kinda like living next to a volcano. Sure, you know that they could erupt at any moment, but they're docile for now, so it doesn't really matter. Of course, rifts are not entirely innocent. Many of the worlds they connect to are primitive or devoid of intelligent life, so the worst that might wander through could be a lost chicken or another animal. But in the case of the dinosaur, really bad things can come true. These creatures are collectively called weird beasts. Most are just exotic animals, but some do possess preternatural ability. Some of the more perceptive of you may have started to wonder, what is preventing aliens from taking over Atlas? Well, here's some good news, depending on how you look at it. You see, there's a catch to traveling through the rifts, and it's called Traveler's Decay. Traveler's Decay is a poorly understood anomaly that affects everything or anyone that leaves the world of origin, and it will destroy them within 30 days. This process isn't noticeable immediately. The moment you leave your native world, the process begins, but the symptoms don't appear around day 21. After that, the decay accelerates and the body begins to physically fall apart until nothing remains except an anthracite-like residue, simply known as grey stuff. This is a way to identify rift locations, by the way, because they tend to be surrounded by the stuff. To clarify, living beings usually notice nothing as long as they remain only briefly in another world. Objects, however, fare far worse. I won't go into mechanics here, but just know this: the more advanced the technology, the faster it will break down as individual components decay beyond repair. For this reason, associates on expedition often rely on less advanced equipment. Traveler's Decay is more than an inconvenience though. It prevents large-scale invasions between worlds. Advanced armies cannot sustain themselves, and harvested material can't be transported back. Hence, mining colonies or mass extraction operations simply are not possible. The only viable approach is rapid retrieval and reverse engineering of devices before decay sets in. Just know that whatever enters Atlas will leave as a pile of ash. There is rift-based biology. Some species have found ways to procreate on other worlds. But here you have to think on a species-wide level. Individual creatures cannot survive due to Traveler's Decay. Instead, some animal species send out what are sometimes referred to as colony beasts, or queens. Take rift fairies, for example. A pregnant female will head through a rift and begin planting eggs, or rather chrysalis, in the nearby flora. As those eggs mature, the queen will guard them, and by the time she is killed by the effects of Traveler's Decay, the eggs will hatch and a new colony is formed. This is just one way how weird beasts circumvent Traveler's Decay. But what about intelligent beings? Some civilizations and species have found other ways around this limitation. Through parasites, mind control, possession, none of them are particularly ethical. As you may have imagined, these subversive methods are extremely difficult to detect. That's where the Association of Ishtar comes in, a secretive organization of volunteers who seek to protect the world from enemies both within and without. Although they operate underneath a formal framework, they act like vigilantes. They even have a motto: Sodales nullis imparis parent, or simply, associates obey no commands. Each associate operates as they see fit and therefore can act instantly on any suspect activity. Although they often work alone or in ad hoc groups, they do have special committees that are more permanent. One such committee are the Resurrection Men, who have dedicated themselves to identifying and tracking compromised individuals. Unfortunately, by the time such outsiders, as these aliens are called, are uncovered, they're often surrounded with collaborators, sometimes entire rift cults willing to defend them to the very end. Now, cults come in many shapes and sizes. Some are entirely native, people who have strange revelations or particular ideas of what a rift-shaped future should look like. Others have been subverted by outsiders. Not all of them are malicious. In fact, some rift cults seek to mitigate or destroy the harmful effects of rifts. Yet others seek to accelerate the environmental changes these anomalies bring about. To use rift fairies again, although they are harmless, as long as you leave their territories alone, the males in particular can become a menace to local communities. They'll terrorize livestock and keep families awake at night with their luminous presence. And these are considered to be a minor nuisance. The other species terraform entire areas into ideal breeding grounds. The same goes for Xenoflora. The same goes for Xenoflora, which often uses local plant life or even fauna as hosts for its saplings. And that brings us to the biggest threat of all: the tears. Experts do not agree on whether a tear should even be classified as a rift, because there's something else altogether. Remember we mentioned Lorraine? Well, there used to be a prosperous city called Schildburg. Then one day, a tear opened near the city, and before anyone could respond, alien overran its periphery. Tears are not gateways to other worlds. Rather, they appear to be a one-way street to another dimension that contains horrors beyond human comprehension. None of these beings are considered natural, and preternatural abilities are the rule rather than the exception. The French Emperor Charlemagne I was personally involved in attempting to contain the disaster. Unfortunately, not all civilians could be evacuated and thousands died. This event fundamentally changed the Emperor, who had overseen the Lorraine Exclusion Zone ever since. He also became involved with a rift cult known as the Rosetta Serpents, who wield a considerable influence in the French administration ever since. But that's a story for another time. Suffice it to say, people have grown uneasy as government leaders increasingly affiliate with occult organizations and esoteric beliefs. As for the Exclusion Zone, it's an alien hellscape within a cordoned-off region. That alone is bad enough, but the Low Countries are expanding their trade networks into these areas to secure trade routes in an ever-changing world. To that end, the Dutch greenlit the founding of a new alliance called the Hanseatic Restoration, more commonly known as the Hansa. Not only does it guarantee trade to allied cities, it also funds the Rhine Guards, which now patrols the rivers near the Lorraine Exclusion Zone. Notice I said cities, not nations. Therefore, the great powers like France and Prussia consider the Hansa a ploy to subvert important trade routes among Europe's rivers and seas. The Hansa, however, argued that if more exclusion zones are formed, nation-states may no longer be able to guarantee any urban safety or trade. This may seem like a petty struggle between self-government and state control, but it is a direct consequence of the rift's side effects. There's one thing that's very important to realize here about this setting. Nightwatch isn't about saving the world, it's about preparing for the next paradigm. This is an alternate 19th century in which the unknown isn't lurking among the stars, but beyond the rift that just appeared in your garden shed. And progress is not a straight line, but something more akin to an Escher painting. But that's all for today. In the coming videos, we'll start narrowing the focus on factions, nations, and whatever you guys request. First, we'll have a look at the organizations that profit from them, the cults that worship them, and the people who believe the world must change, no matter the cost. So, if that tickles your fancy, don't forget to like and subscribe, and please let us know what you think in the comments. If you're already a reader of the book series, these videos will help you explore the world beyond the pages. If you want to lead a campaign for Nightwatch, it will give you tools, contacts, and story beats you can drop directly into your own campaign. And if you're here just for the lore, well, welcome, you got exactly what you wanted. Hopefully this will also be useful for people who are considering writing steampunk, to show it can be more than just about an aesthetic. Also, we're also open for submissions of short stories that take place within the wider context of the Association of Ishtar. Next time we'll start discussing the factions, beginning with the Association of Ishtar itself. Because this time I actually have a plan. In fact, I've already prepared over a dozen scripts, so I hope to produce more regularly with more original art. Speaking of which, our website just got a major upgrade and includes Nightwatch content as well as blogs. Members will also get access to video scripts like these, so you can read it on your own time. We're also working on paid tiers to replace our current Patreon and REAM pages. Until then, may she see us true, and the prying prevail.